in the Milwaukee, in between Milwaukee and Madison in Wisconsin, in a
Okay.
little city called Oconomowoc.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, where are you located?
I'm in northern New Mexico. I don't know if
Okay.
you're familiar with Durango, Colorado,
Yep.
but we're just south of Durango near the Four Corners.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Good.
My dad told me a story when he was a kid when he got to go see the Four Corners. And he
Yeah.
said it was such a cool like experience to go see four different states at once.
Yep. Yep. You spread out on all fours and there you go. So only place in America you can do that for sure. So
Yep. That's what he told me. And then my uncle lived in Santa Fe for a little bit.
oh yeah. Yeah. Santa Fe is about 3 hours from us.
So that's as close as I've gotten to where you were at.
Yeah, it's a beautiful area down here. We're right at the foothills of the Rockies, but we're high desert, so we get kind of we get mild seasons. I say that, but we got snow on the ground this morning. So
Oh, gee.
Really?
yeah, so usually it's pretty mild weather, and we're right at the foothill of the Rockies, so we get to go do all the outdoor stuff,
Yeah.
but not get the extreme weather. So it's pretty
Yeah.
nice.
That's cool. That is very cool. I haven't been out to New Mexico in, man, 15 years,
Yeah,
I feel like. And when I was there and I was younger, the only thing I remember was a culture shock. There was a lot of homeless down in Santa Fe. It was like all the parks were like little clusters. I don't know if that's still a thing or what that was. I was too young to know the outside things that factored into all of that. So
yeah, it's incredible because we're the fifth largest state in the union. But we're always ranked like 49 and 50th in like the poverty,
really,
all of those things. I think part of it too is we have a lot of reservations.
Yeah.
And they want to operate on their own, which is fantastic.
yeah,
But they don't provide the infrastructure to help their people succeed as well or as efficiently as they could.
yeah,
And so there's some problems that come into play there, and that definitely impacts the statistics. But
yeah.
it's a beautiful state. They call it the land of enchantment. We call it the land of entrapment. But it's a fantastic state. Living here, and I moved down from Seattle about 20 years ago. So when I first moved here, I was like, oh my gosh, there's a lot of dirt in New Mexico. And but now I see the beauty of the bluffs and the beauty of the sandstone and the beauty of the Southwest area. So it's been a cool transition, raising my family here, and we really have no complaints. So
yeah. I did like the area. It was super cool to see. In my limited memory of it, it reminded me of Salt Lake, Utah, for some reason.
I can see that. Yeah.
But yeah, it was a lot of fun, and I do understand a little bit how those the native culture, like it does kind of clash a little bit with like the Americanized culture, I guess, because we had a cabin up north in Wisconsin and they had the Menominee Indians, and we actually owned a property on their land. So we were governed by the Shawano Police Department. But if you were a native, you were governed by the tribe.
Yep.
So if you did anything illegal and the U.S. police force caught you or we're going to give you a citation, they would take it and give it to the tribe, and then the tribe would do their own legality through it. And it just caused a little bit of a hiccup of who do I listen to or what's right and what's wrong, because I can't spearfish, but I have a boat right next to me spearfishing, and like there's no guns, but they can hunt. There was just some nuances which like I understand. I'm a visitor here. This is your home. So
sure. Yeah, and they have their tribunals, and they're their own sovereign nation. So what's incredible is we have the largest Indian reservation just to the west of Farmington, which is the Navajo Nation. It's the largest reservation in the country. And they are rich with oil and gas, I mean, and coal and everything, all the natural resources. But they stop growth in the corporate sector because you're not allowed to own land. So if a McDonald's wants to build a McDonald's out there, they have to lease the land for 99 years. and they can
Oh,
never own the land. So it just stops any type of economic development that happens out there, unless there's just a really compelling case of why a company would want to build buildings on land they don't own. So it's a very
yeah.
unique situation. It's just stuff like that they've got to get, they've got to get caught up if they want growth for their people,
Yeah.
And
I know there's a couple companies out, like I believe Walgreens, like they don't own any of their buildings or own any of their land. They always lease their own buildings.
Yeah.
I
Yep.
think it's back to another company that they own, but
Yeah.
it's got to be something like that. But it's even more far removed from that
Yep.
to get anything moving in there. Yeah. They usually only had like gas stations or little convenient like 7-Eleven shops
Yeah.
up in that area.
Yeah, it's pretty sparse for sure. So they have great potential, and I've worked with a lot of Navajos that are progressive thinking in regard to business development and how do we become more economic friendly, and how do we help our people, how do we build infrastructures out and things like that. And I've been on panels and things like that to help give them guidance and thoughts. But then when they get to when they get actually into the government affairs component, he said it's a standstill. And
A lot of red tape, I'm sure.
Yep. So that's it.
Is that majority of what you handle, or what is your bulk of what you do in your business?
Yeah, so I primarily do residential real estate, and I got licensed in 2001. Moved down from Seattle, as I was saying, and of course I love to dabble in commercial, but commercial around here, just unless you're solely focused on commercial and it's got its swings, really the money's to be made in the residential market in San Juan County. And I was one of those few that when I got my license, I was able to, I had just graduated from the University of Washington, and I really didn't know what I was going to do with my life. And my dad said, "Hey, there's a great opportunity. There's a lady selling her small real estate firm here." So I got my license and actually became an owner broker before I had ever owned a piece of real estate. Before
That's
I
awesome.
closed a transaction, it was frightening. So at the same time, though, I was very thankful to have. I had two agents that were veteran agents, and they kind of took me under their wing, even though I was the owner. And really, because what you learn in real estate school, as you're aware, is very different than the actual practice of real estate.
Yeah.
And so I understood contracts real well, just getting my undergraduate degree in business and things like that. I understood the theoretical components, but I just didn't understand how to put it in practice. And so, dealing with those ladies, I'm so thankful because I gleaned and learned so much from them in the first couple of years. My learning curve was steep. Since then, they've closed that loophole where you cannot be a qualifying broker without having a couple of years of experience, and thank goodness they have, because that was I navigated the gauntlet, but I could see how others could get in trouble. So
I've already gone through like the broker studying material, but when I called the state to take my test, I was a couple points shy. So you need to be in it for, I think in Wisconsin it's 3 years or 2 years. I'm going to get fact checked on that one. And then you need to get 40 points, and points are through transactions. So if you buy or sell a piece of land, it's a half point. If it's a residential property, it's 3 or 4, and you just need to accumulate 40 points so you're eligible. So yeah, I'm glad that they closed the gap on that one, because it is like you're saying, when you go into a classroom and you learn with the class, or you take your online studying material, you get your 72 hours of being an agent. You just learned, I'm trying to think of an analogy. You learn the pieces of the bike, like you learn the pedal, you learn where the seat was and the handlebars and the brakes. But when you actually are like out of the classroom and it's like, okay, now operate the bike, and you're like, yeah, I don't know how to do that. So you have to learn like the nuances of the transaction and what you do here and what you do there and what you can and can't do. And so it is a lot different out in the real world. And then you throw in commercial real estate, which to me is like the wild, wild west. There's some rules, but like you got to watch your back a little bit, because I've heard of some deals, people not getting paid because it wasn't on paper, and there's little to no goodwill of a deal. It's what's on paper is what's happening.
Exactly. And there's, a commercial, if you look at it on the first layer, is really pretty simple and straightforward. You look at the contracts. There's very little mess up, right? It's basic. Here's your due diligence period. Here's your closing. They don't have as many contingencies as residential sales typically.
Yes.
But once you peel back a layer or two, you're absolutely right. Then it's kind of like you're in a room and you're wondering where the hit's going to come from.
Yeah.
And in the commercial space, it can come from any number of directions, and it can happen after the transactions close. In fact, I've been involved on the political side of things with the Realtors Association of New Mexico for many years. I was the state RPAC chair, which is the Realtor Political Action Committee chair, for a couple of years. And what we do is we vet candidates that are running for positions, whether it's for a school board, for governor, for Senate, for state representatives, whatever it is. We sit down and we vet these candidates on both sides of the aisle. So they could be red, blue, independent, whatever they are. And we try to identify certain things. Are they first and foremost property rights friendly? Are they going to support our agenda for property rights? Because without property rights in America and in our states, we have nothing. I mean, that's what saved America many times over the years, is the fact that we have this land underneath us that we could leverage when we need to. And it continues to keep movement for the economy and things like that. So it's a thing that we have to continue to protect. And when we erode people's benefits to own property, we erode the core. If you think of the core strength of your body, it's the core of America. And so we fight diligently to protect those. So that's number one. The number two thing is, are they likely to win? Is this candidate likely to win? Are we betting on a pony that's going to win the race? And so we vet these candidates. We have good conversations with them. We make sure that they property rights are a great priority, and then they're likely to win. And then the third thing is, are they just good people? Are they unscrupulous? So we go through that kind of check. And the reason I tell you that is because we have established as realtors over the years these fantastic relationships with these lawmakers. And so when we have a bill that comes into play that says, hey, we want to put a 1% transfer tax on properties in Santa Fe, where if you sell a property, not only do you have to pay your normal closing costs, you have to pay an additional 1% of your value to the state for the state to do whatever they're going to do with. And usually they're not very efficient with that money. We're in there fighting. We're in there saying, no, that's not something that we want. That's going to harm the benefit of owning a property in Santa Fe. And it's unreasonable to ask. And so we go in there guns blazing, and we have these relationships that we've built with these lawmakers over the years that help us with that. So I'm not sure where I was going with that point.
No, I appreciate the work doing that, because one, sitting in those meetings, a lot of people, I think, would benefit and see how surprisingly interesting those meetings are. I go to like little city council meetings here, and I think they're interesting. So the fact that you get to sit down with these future lawmakers, or who could be lawmakers, to find out really what their motives are, rather than just turning on the news and seeing whatever the news is going to tell you the story of, which is super cool to see that in like the grassroots kind of level of it all. So I'm sure those meetings are very interesting and very productive. And then two, thanks for doing that. I didn't even know that was a thing that they did, where they vetted politicians.
Yeah,
obviously it makes sense now that you bring it up, but I didn't think that there was a step in there. So that's really cool to know.
I call it the silent war, because most people just go through life, and especially if you're in the real estate space and you're investing and you're buying and you're selling and you're doing these things, there's a silent war going on with real estate constantly. And we are fighting. Realtors are on the front line fighting it, and we give money, as individual realtors and as associations, we give money to this PAC that helps lobby for these causes. So, obviously you're familiar with the 1031 exchange.
Yep, that was just in jeopardy 2 years ago.
Who was fighting that? The number one opposition to that was the realtors. And we are fighting those battles on the national level, on the state level, and on the local level constantly. And it's just a quiet war that we are continuing to fight. It's one of those things, we don't go out and try to get a pat on the back or anything. We just understand how important it is for the everyday person retain the benefits of owning property in the United States, and that's one of the big benefits we have living in this country, and we want to retain that. And it's such a big pie that people are always trying to chip at, you know, but it's our pie. It's what we as Americans have, and we can, you know, obviously exchange that between us. But when other entities, the government and whatnot, come in and they start to chew away at that pie or chew away at those rights, it becomes dangerous. So
yeah, and I'm glad you brought up the 1031, because I was going to bring that up right after, saying like this is another point of the silent war that has continued to fight, because that was the closest I've ever seen it to being taken out about 2 years ago. So I'm glad that didn't change.
Well, you remember the Dodd-Frank Act? Have you heard of that back in?
No, I have not.
Okay, so back in 2008, well, when the crash happened in 2005, 6, 7, right? Back then, what was happening was a lot of fogger loans were going out, and not to repeat history, but I think it's important for people to understand.
It's needed.
Yep, we called them fogger loans because if you could fog a mirror, you could get a loan, right? So if you were breathing, you could get a loan. I mean, mortgage brokers were originating no income, stated income, no doc, first and second loans. And so you could walk in and say, hey, I make $250,000 a year. And they would say, okay, and you don't need any documentation to back that up. I want to do.
I don't see any problem with that.
Yeah, not at all, right? I don't want to put a down payment down. I want any skin in the game here. Okay, sure. You know, what's your credit score? Oh, 590. Okay, well, we can make it happen for you, right? So that's what created that bubble and the burst back in the day. Well, out of that, legislators came and on the national level primarily, and just said, look, we got to clean this up. And understandably, I mean, that was terrible business practices. Individually as realtors, we made it a practice at my office that, like, look, if we felt at the time, we had many conversations, we feel like this, if we're working with a client that they're purchasing a property that they should not be purchasing, they could not afford, because a lot of these people weren't doing it as investments, they were doing it as primary residences. Mm-hmm. That's when you get into trouble. Our stance was we would be advocates for a common sense approach. Like, you really need to consider this, because if you get in trouble, we don't want it on our minds that we got you into this mess. So we would vet people, and that was just us personally. I know there was a lot of realtors out there that did the same, but there was a lot that didn't. And of course, on the mortgage side of things, it was just the Wild West. But out of that, the legislators said, hey, we're going to just kind of scoop everything together, and we're going to put some really tight restrictions on lending practices. And rightfully so to some degree. And obviously you have the secondary market, and loans have to fit into a box. And loans that fit into the box, you get thousands of those loans together, you put them in a bag, and you sell it on the secondary market. And when you have Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac who purchases that, which are government subsidized, right? So ultimately it gets to the feds, right? And so they have some skin in the game in regard to maintaining the balancing act. To tighten up those regulations was the right thing to do, but they went over the top. And that's when the realtors stepped in. And so they were doing things like, back then it was the 1031 exchange as well, but also owner finance. I don't know how much you deal with owner finance, but here in New Mexico, owner finance is a big deal. I
wish more people did that up here. It's like it's a foreign concept for some people up here.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about that, because I think it's important for people to understand. There's really two types of owner finance. You have an owner finance where John Smith has a property he owns outright, and he wants to be able to collect the interest on that asset, secured by an asset, and he wants to amortize it like a bank. A very smart thing to do, because that's why banks have big buildings and big pockets. So he makes all that front-loaded interest, maybe builds in a balloon payment, and we go through a normal closing. We close it at the title company. There's title insurance conveyed. There's a closing that happens. There's 2 deeds that are signed. One deed is a general warranty deed conveying it to the buyer. One is a special warranty deed conveying it back to the seller, and those deeds are held in escrow. And if the buyer defaults on their agreement with the seller, then that special warranty deed is recorded back, and the seller gets the property back, and they evict what now becomes the tenant at that point. Now, if the buyer goes through and fulfills their obligation and pays that property off within the time frame and makes their payments according to their amortization schedule and what's agreed in their contract, then they're conveyed the general warranty deed. So it's a very practical thing that happens.
Yep.
That's one type of owner finance. Another type of owner finance is what we call a wrap, a real estate contract wrap. And that's where John Smith has a mortgage on the home. And let's say he has a property that's worth $150,000 and his current payment is $800 a month, principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. He can sell that property to someone that puts some money down, and we go through and we close that transaction like what I just discussed or described. The difference is that monthly payment, the new monthly payment that the buyer has to exceed the existing monthly payment. So if his existing monthly payment is $800, the new payment has to be $900 or something higher. The title company will not record a deficit real estate contract.
Yep.
That buyer makes the payment to an escrow company. The escrow company pays the underlying note, and then any leftover goes to the seller. So there's an independent third party that's taking care of that buyer's interest, because if they paid that directly to the seller may not pay their mortgage and go off to, wherever, Vegas.
Yeah.
So there's some built-ins there. So you have a clean real estate contract, and then you have a real estate contract with a wrap. And we see those scenarios in New Mexico quite a bit. And they're for certain situations that make sense. In fact, I just closed one where a father, I should say he's probably in his 80s. His son was in his 60s. His son passed away. The father did not have any money to put the repairs into this home to get it up to where it needed to be to sell the property. So he had several offers on the property, FHA. The home would not comply, FHA.
Yeah.
He wasn't getting any conventional or cash offers. Someone came in, made an offer with an owner finance with a balloon in 36 months. So now he was able to close the hemorrhage of this monthly payment, because it was a wrap situation, and allow for a new owner to come in and do those repairs. And in 36 months, he'll be paid off and free of the property. So there are situations where it really makes sense. So full circle back to what I was discussing with the legislative part, they put owner finance into the Dodd-Frank Act, where it was going to require that owners qualify these buyers like a mortgage. And if they couldn't prove that they did, then they were subject to fines, penalties, potentially jail time. And so the realtors came out.
I did not know that side.
Yes. So we came out in droves and fought to stop that from happening. They also were talking about taking FHA lending away from manufactured properties that were on permanent foundations, which is another, that is a tremendous amount of properties that, are policy.
Can you recall their reason why they didn't want the manufactured home?
Because at the time, Fannie and Freddie, right? They're the ones that back the FHA product. I think it's Fannie. They were just jumping out of the boiling pot of water at that point.
Okay.
And so they were looking for anything that they could do to shield liability down the road.
Okay.
And so that was on the docket as well. Shut off that valve that feeds the manufactured on permanent foundation, which is considered real property at that point, right?
Right.
Title, and it becomes real, quote unquote, real property. And so they put that on the docket, and we fought that as well, because they wanted to push that to the conventional sector. Well, conventional loans should take care of that. Well, conventional products just aren't conducive to lending on manufactured homes. And so what would happen is all of a sudden you would stop the sales, buying and selling of manufactured homes. People that own manufactured homes, which millions of would be in a very difficult position, because
they'd be stuck.
Yeah, they'd be stuck. Yeah, and all of a sudden their asset, which was valued here, would be, would be marginalized, would be decreasing in value rapidly. They couldn't sell their products. So there was all kinds of things there. So I think it's just important for your listeners to understand that there is a quiet war that's going on behind the scenes, and these things are on the docket for legislators all the time. Real estate's an easy target, right?
Yeah.
There's so much of it that changes hands. They go, ooh, we need a little bit of money. There's a good place to get it.
And I think the HGTV syndrome has hit, where all of it's glamorous and it's so easy and there's so much money, and a dummy could make millions of dollars.
Yeah.
Like, yes, real estate's not rocket science. I was not valedictorian, but you need some knowledge. You need to do it correctly. There are things you need to do in order to be successful. I'm surprised that the manufactured home aspect of that I'm going to read on that one, as well as the wrap, because that's a term I have not heard before. But I have read into the owner financing route. Pace Morby or Moby. Have you heard that name?
I haven't.
He's a big on Instagram and social media and all that. And he's written a few books. He's been on podcasts, but he has built his whole real estate on owner financing.
Yeah.
He's put zero money into it, buys everything owner financing. In his pitches and the way he frames the deal is super easy to digest for someone new. So if someone is interested in this owner financing idea and maybe has a lead on something but has never done it, because it isn't an everyday occurrence, at least in the Midwest, check out Pace on Instagram, on Facebook. Check out a podcast he's on. The way that he speaks about it makes it very, very easy to understand. Obviously, take the next step and read more before you jump in.
Sure.
But he's another good guy to look at for that owner financing, because he comes with decades of knowledge.
Yeah. And owner financing really is an incredible tool to use if you are investing in real estate, because you don't have to drag out all of your tax returns. You don't have to jump through the grinder of the lending process. If you can find an owner finance, you have a specific amount of down payment that satisfies their needs. And most of the time it's 10 to 15% down. So if you're looking at a $200,000 property, you're looking at $20,000 down, maybe $30,000 down. And that's a direct principal reduction, right? So you have very small closing costs. You don't have lender origination fees. You don't necessarily have to have an appraisal. Not that I wouldn't recommend that, but you can kind of pick and choose what you want to do in that scenario. But the most important thing is, this is where we see buyers getting into trouble, is when they go to someone that has the potential for an owner finance, and that person says, you know what, let's just go ahead and close this, and we'll do a one-page document. You don't need to go to a title company. You don't need to do your title insurance. Just start paying into this escrow. This escrow will record it and pay me, right? That's where people get in trouble, because through the process of the title insurance, the discovery phase, they discover these things. There's a lien against the property. Well, we should know about that, obviously. Oh, there's a tax lien against the property. Oh, they're in arrears on property taxes. There's any number of scenarios that come up that title insurance is so critical. So I just highly recommend that you still go through that normal closing process.
Yeah.
But it's such a tool. In fact, when I buy investment properties, I always look for owner finance scenarios, because for me, again, dragging out, being an independent contractor as a realtor, dragging out all my stuff, and then just going through the lending process is just arduous. So what I do is I build in balloon payments. And once you own a property for a certain period of time, it's easier to go to the bank, because you've built in some equity at that point, and do a refinance versus going through and doing a straight purchase.
Yes.
And so there's several factors there that the owner finance really kicks into play, and is a smart move for people that want to do some research on it and really look into how that. Now I call it a real estate contract. It's an owner finance, or it's an owner finance with a wrap. You're wrapping an existing mortgage. So for your listeners, they can do a little bit of digging on both.
Yeah. And I'm trying to think of the whys of just trying to recap of the government sanctions that were being brought to the table on real estate. Why do you think they were asking for that 1% transfer fee? Is it because they were backing the original mortgage and they felt that they had some liability that they should be compensated for, or what was their angle on that one? I know what their angle was on the 1031 exchange.
Yeah.
But what was their angle with that one?
Great question, Marcus. So obviously in every county in the state, you have different legislators. And then of course, on the state level as a whole, you have a different animal. The transfer tax that we were talking about specifically was in Santa Fe. And Santa Fe usually kind of leads the state in what they're trying to do. They were many times they were trying to tax sodas higher than they would grape juice. They just had some weird things going on there. Well, the real estate transfer tax hit the radar. And what that is if let's just take a look at San Juan County, for instance. Here, San Juan County, where I live, you have four different municipalities. You have Farmington, which is considered a metro area. It's over 50,000 people. You have Aztec, which is maybe 10,000 people, Bloomfield, 15,000 people, and Kirtland, about 10,000 people. So, in the county, we have maybe 125 to 150,000 people. Last year in real estate, there was $250 million worth of real estate that changed hands in our little county. Wow. So when you take $250 million and you put 1% onto that, you're talking a significant amount of revenue to the local municipality. And so in that situation in Santa Fe, you're talking numbers that are 20 times bigger than San Juan County. Yeah. And if you at a 1% transfer tax, all of a sudden that's a new income stream for Santa Fe and the local government there. And interesting. It usually doesn't happen with a 1%. Usually it's a 0.25%, right? Usually it's something very small where they creak open the door. And then when they creak open the door, they say, "Oh, look, we've been getting a 0.25% for the last 5 years. We really need to up that to 0.5% or 0.75%." So they just went for the home run shot off the bat. Yep, that's it. And that's how these things, they just erode. They continue to erode. So when we see something like that coming legislatively, as realtors, we watch every single bill that hits the floor on the state level. Now we have the national level. They do the same on the national level. We do it in our local state. When we see anything like that, we are at the door fighting. And we are tapping into those people that we have vetted, those partners or those politicians that are on both sides of the aisle that we have supported with monetarily to help with their races. And so we've built those bridges strategically. And there's nothing wrong with that. You have to be strategic in this business. You're either at the dinner table or you're the dinner. And so we've got to be at the dinner table with property rights. And so, again, it goes back to a lot of people just kind of go through their life and they don't understand the silent war is happening, but it's happening. And if you are working with a realtor, thank them for contributing to our PAC. It does. It has paid dividends over the years. Yeah, absolutely. And with there's being so many things moving within local municipality and the national, is there a scenario where you guys have called on like the NAR? Yep. Yeah, NAR? Yeah, yep. I'm forgetting my acronyms here, which is the National Association. Have they come in and given you aid or knowledge a little bit on, hey, this is where it is on the national, use this on the local? In fact, that's a fantastic question. So I can give two examples. One example was the Dodd-Frank Act. In fact, they came to New Mexico, and I was part of that committee with our state attorney for RANM, Realtors Association of New Mexico. We have a state attorney, and she helps develop our contracts. And so her and I and a couple others, we were involved in that process when the Dodd-Frank Act was happening. And NAR reached out to us and said, "Hey, New Mexico, we know you do a lot of owner finance. We need you to review this and tell us what is dangerous about this." And so we had the opportunity in New Mexico to review that component that affected everyone across the country and put our 2 cents in. And because of those efforts, and I have to give a lot of credit to Ashley Strauss Martin, largely because of her efforts, that was amended and removed from the Dodd-Frank Act. And so that's an example of them coming to us. And then when
That's
we
cool.
have situations where we had a bill in Albuquerque that was just absolutely terrible for business owners. Basically allows for employees to go, I can just not show up for work, and you can't ask me if I was sick. You can't ask me what my reason was, even if I don't have the time reserved, my sick leave or whatever else. I still get additional leeway there. I mean, it's just absolutely terrible for business in Albuquerque. It would have been so destructive. Now they ended up passing a bill that morphed into something that was far less destructive, but it creaked the door open, which is a byproduct of it. But because it was so bad, the National Association of Realtors came in and helped fund our efforts to fight that bill. And so as realtors, we step into the fray. We are in the trenches with the gloves on, fighting these bills and fighting these legislators to stop things that are going to be harmful for business. Because if it's harmful for business, then you don't have people moving to Albuquerque.
Yeah.
It's not good for the city. There's no reason for businesses to come here. If there's no reason for businesses to come here, then we don't have movement with real estate, and we need movement. We have to have movement. So it's fascinating things that happen.
Yeah, I'm blown away that was even on the floor.
Yeah.
Like, if you don't want to go to work, just don't.
Yep.
Like, I understand that. Yeah. I have a crew. Like, they have families, they have lives. Yeah. Just give me a call. Like, that's all I need is a call that let me know you're not going to be there. But if someone gave me a call like, I'm not going to be there, you can't ask me why, and then just hangs up. How is that going to be productive for anybody?
It was terrible. Yeah. And on top of that, you could get sued as a business owner if you pressed the issue, asked, or terminated that person for that reason.
Oh my God.
Or if they thought you terminated them because of that reason. It may be because they're just a terrible employee and they missed work, without no show.
I'm guessing that was just for real estate, or was that across the board in any small business?
All businesses. That was all businesses in Albuquerque. And so that's why we just said this is such a destructive bill for economic growth.
Are they factoring in schools to that as well, or schools not businesses because they're government run?
Because
if teachers just don't show up and they don't tell you why they're not showing up, are they still teachers, or are you getting
that's a great question, Marcus. I don't know where the layer was there between private and government, but it was certainly in the private sector. And it was so destructive and so harmful for business owners that it was just the word egregious comes to my head. Like, it was just so egregious to the business owners that risk everything every day, are out fighting, are up early, are going home late, are sacrificing constantly, are risking constantly to grow their business.
Well, even for managers of businesses too. I mean, just if you look at like the whole restaurant industry and just the lack of servers available at this point, like, just I don't want to come to work today. Wait, what?
Yeah.
I don't get to do that.
Yeah. Then you get a lunch rush, and now you have terrible service.
Yeah.
And it's not the owner's fault. It's just people just don't want to show up. And there's no way there was no way.
No repercussions.
There any repercussions to the person that didn't show up. Like, you lost your job. Well, no, you can't lose your job. So terrible.
I mean, as a business owner, if that was the policy, like you kind of referenced, I don't know if I'd be moving an office there if I knew that employees just didn't have to show up and didn't tell anybody what was going on. Yeah. That's scary.
It is.
And that leads to so many terrible, just for personal accounting, like just to keep yourself accountable on things. That's just a bad pattern to get into. But I'm glad that got kiboshed. I'm happy about that.
Yeah. We already have that problem, right, in America, where people just don't want to be accountable for their actions. Yeah. And that is a big problem for people. Yep. Just, if you have no accountability, then it's like, where are your parameters in life? Your moral compass is just spinning.
Which like anybody who's in full-time real estate knows, you have to be disciplined to do this. Like this is as much as you get the the HGTVs or the people on social media saying that you can make $10,000 in your first month.
Yeah,
We get all that.
sure.
I mean, a blind squirrel finds a nut. It does
Yep.
happen.
Yep.
But more often than not, you're spending 3, 4, 5 years to try and build up something for it to be sustainable to work. And you're putting in a lot of hours, even if it's not physical labor, you're mental taxing on the business development and all that stuff. So to think that there's even a question of work ethic or accountability just seems strange to me.
Yeah.
Because like, if you don't have a work ethic in real estate, you're going to work yourself out quickly.
Yeah.
You'll eventually, within a couple of years, if you make it a year, just work yourself out. If you're an agent and you don't put in your calls to make like leads, you've no business. So you're going to find something else. If you have clients, you're not calling them back and not being accountable to them, you're going to lose those clients and you're going to be out of a job.
Yeah.
So that goes against everything I feel you need in real estate.
Isn't that incredible? I mean,
It seems
it's so
mind-blowing.
so fundamental, but these things, as atrocious as they sound, hit the floor and get traction in legislative situations.
Yes.
And it is just absolutely mind-boggling. And then you start thinking of these people just live in a bubble. Like,
Right.
how are they even in touch with reality? What's really going on?
I just don't think, and maybe I'm being too naive, but I'm thinking, okay, if let's say Amazon, big, well-known company, they're already under attack. So I feel bad for bringing up Amazon. But if Jeff Bezos said, all right, if you don't come to work and don't give me a reason, you're fired. And that made national news. And everybody was saying, okay, Amazon doesn't treat their people well. One, people aren't going to work there and Amazon will go downhill. We don't really need a law for that one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Like they're just going to go obsolete because no one's going to want to work there.
No, yeah, totally unnecessary. It's going to find its own balance in the open market.
Right.
I mean, that's the beauty of the open market, is that you have competition. You have all these forces that create balance. There at some point there's a balance.
Yeah.
And if you have a company over here that is just terrible and they're firing employees left and right, they're hard to work for, and they don't pay you right, then you're going to come over here to this company.
Right.
And eventually the other company that's terrible will go, hey, we need to get our act together. We need to figure something out or we're going to fail in the market. And that's the natural way an open market performs.
Right.
You don't need to have all these extra layers of bureaucracy on top of it, giving people reasons and excuses to sue and to not show up for work or not be held accountable for actions. Now, I understand labor laws. I get it. You shouldn't be 12 years old working 30 hours a week. I get it. So there's certain parameters that you have to set for the game, but at some point you back away and let the open market play.
Right. And there was a book I was reading, and I want to say it was Outliers, but I might be mistaken on the book. But they talked about Nokia, and Nokia was the first cell phone company that came out. And or was it BlackBerry? I think it was BlackBerry, actually. The Palm Pilot was the first thing that came out, and his development team was talking about trying to make this into a cell phone, and he did not want to make it into a cell phone. He just wanted to be a Palm Pilot. And because they didn't develop, because they didn't adapt, because they didn't move forward, and with the trends of what people are looking for, I don't think anybody owns a BlackBerry anymore.
Yeah.
So it went from like the hottest item to like absolutely obsolete.
Yeah.
And that's what I think of balance. Like they didn't develop, they didn't listen to what the customer's wanting. They didn't listen. I don't know if it's necessarily what their employees wanted, but in the same vein, if the employees all wanted one thing and then they all quit, BlackBerry's out anyways.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
I just found that fascinating as a real life example of not necessarily you can't take your foot off the pedal, but you can't just sit back and sit on a beach and sip a Mai Tai all day. You're gonna lose. Yeah.
And that's not it's not the reality of it, for sure. I mean, those are the benefits and the perks that you work toward, and should be enjoyed in small flavors. But the reality is you got to get up there and roll your sleeves up and work.
Yeah.
Be accountable and be disciplined and do all these things to become, successful. Be intentional with your with who you are as a professional, And I think that there's a lot of power there. And if you rob people of that opportunity, you're not doing them any service.
Yeah.
And I was just talking to someone about the opportunity to fail. I just completed an Ironman a week and a half ago.
Nice.
Congrats.
You look good for going through an Ironman.
Thank
You're not
you.
too beat up.
They should call it, it's the swim, bike, run. It should be like the swim, bike, hobble. By the time you get to the marathon, you're just, everything's out the window. So,
Pulling yourself along.
yeah. But I completed it. And part of it, while you're out there doing this and while you're training for something like that, you're alone with your thoughts a lot. And I think about, these types of concepts. And one of the concepts that I was sharing with my wife was the ability to fail, right? If you rob someone of their potential to fail, you're robbing them of their ability to succeed. Because if there's no threat of failure, if there's no threat of not making it, then what are you trying to achieve, right?
Yeah.
Failure is a natural part of success, and people need to understand that, embrace failure. And not see it as a negative thing, see it as part of the process. But that's what happens, is we step in and we don't want people to fail. And we don't understand how important that is to the process of development.
Yeah.
So it's just those concepts. And then you start putting that into legislation, and that's where it becomes troublesome. So
It's true. And I talk to my son about failing all the time. Like, he just started basketball. You are going to fail. He played baseball. You're going to fail. You're just going to.
I'm really good at it, actually. So if you have questions, just, send them over to me.
I go through all the stories of my playing days in home runs I've given up, and grand slams I've given up, and all the downs. But I have to go through the downs to get to the goods. It just has to happen. So we're working on the whole being okay to fail. And I think the one message that I always tell them, like, it's okay to fail. It's not okay to just sit there. Like, you have to get back up.
Yeah.
So if you failed, you're sad right now, you're a little beaten down because the last one we had was a parade. He didn't get candy. And he came back to the sorry, Miles, you're going to listen to this in a few years, be embarrassed that I'm telling the story. Sorry. He came back and he sat on the picnic table and he was bummed. And he was like, I didn't get any candy. And I'm like, well, did you see any? And he's like, yeah. And I was like, well, go get it. And he's like, well, the other kids are too fast. And I was like, well, you just have to be faster, because they want candy just like you want candy, but they're going. Yeah. And you can't get mad at them for winning. But what we're not going to do is we're not going to sit on this picnic bench and pout about it. What do you want to do? Where are we going? What's the next thing we're doing? Because just because you didn't get candy doesn't mean we can't go to the park and play, or go play football with the kids that are paying the grant. Like, there was so many other things going. And I felt like it was an important moment of like, yeah, you failed, but like, there's other things. Right. Go do other things. We can't just like sit and swallow the sorrow of what just happened. Move on. Yep.
It's okay to reflect on it. It's okay to see it. It's okay to acknowledge. But yeah, you got to pick up and move on. And then you redirect your thought like, oh, well, you know what? I was actually out with some of my best friends running around. And yeah, I didn't get candy, but hey, we ran around and had a good time. And that's a memory. Yeah. And they all came back and threw their candy in a big circle and they all ate it. It was all fine. But in the moment, the world was ending. So then you have, in that process, you have the ability to hang out with your friends and family. At the end of it, you still got the prize. So, I mean, you turn that adversity into, I mean, this is a great example, because as adults, we forget these things. We need to turn these moments of adversity into, okay, how can I reshape my thought to be thankful and grateful for this opportunity that I learned from? And I think that professionals and people that continue to move forward and do great things in their life have that intention, have that understanding and awareness that I know this was a moment of adversity and failure, but my intention is to use it to my better. So I think that's a fantastic lesson. Great job with your son, Marcus. That's fantastic. I'm trying every day. I don't know if it's working yet. Yeah.
He's probably better for his teeth anyway.
That's true.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Well, and my wife and I, we have two daughters, 9 and 12, and we wrestle with that too. Is we feel like, well, are we failing as parents, right? Like, I mean, you never know, because you're in the house, you're having these, you're butting heads, and you're doing all these things, and they go out the door. And one thing that we've learned is that other parents and teachers come up to us and say, your daughters are so well behaved. Your daughters are thoughtful. Your daughters are kind. And that's when my wife and I look at each other and go, okay, we have to give ourselves a break and go, they're doing the things that we're teaching them out in the real world. With us, they're fighting the battles. And so again, just an awareness component. So you're doing the right things, Marcus. It's just that's your barometer, is what other parents and teachers say.
Yeah, and that's what I'm trying to hold on to, that one, and push them, because obviously, like, I was a young boy and I know what they do. And I can't, like, I know my mom and dad they weren't there in those situations where it was a tough decision for me, or like deep down I felt like it wasn't right, but like I couldn't turn to my left and be like, hey, mom or dad, what should I do? Yeah. All I had was like their voice in my head. Mm-hmm. So I'm just trying to like pound my voice in his head to be like, okay, you're going to come into these situations. I know you're going to. I'm not going to be there. Like, you need to know how to handle this. Yep. But he's only 8. So when Miles is up towards the 12, like where your daughters are at, that's when I think the test is going to really hit.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
To be doing what you're doing. That's fantastic.
Yeah. Well, we are going to have you on for another show, because we didn't even get into your own individual business, and I don't want to get into it now. But in our last couple minutes, are there things on the horizon that you're seeing? I'm going to stick with this governing topic that we've been on. So is there anything nationwide or individually within your municipality that's kind of on the docket that, I don't know if you can't spill the beans or if you're trying to work on it already? Some policies that are coming across the board that you're seeing coming up that you're kind of gearing for and getting ready for?
Here's what I want to make clear to your listeners, and here's the thing that keeps me up at night. I'm going to share this with you because I think it's important to get this message out to people, because it's quietly been happening for a long time, and it's very concerning. It's very concerning for us, for this country, and for our sovereignty, to be quite frank. We've had instances, and you've probably seen instances in the news, where foreign nationals are purchasing real estate in America, right? This is not happening on a small scale, okay? This is happening on a massive scale. In fact, we had a situation just a few years ago where we hosted an international business forum in New Mexico, and the goal was to get business owners that are from different parts of the world to come here and explore New Mexico and hopefully open some businesses and whatnot. What it turned out to be, and this is what opened my eyes to this, was a very specific country sent their people in and spread them out throughout the state, and they began buying up land and properties feverishly. And the reason I mention it is because it struck a chord with me. There's nothing wrong. I don't have any issue with people coming and purchasing land in America. But I do believe that you should be an American to purchase land in America, because we can't go to these other countries and purchase their land. They're not allowing that. So it's a strategic move by their governments to have individuals that pose as business owners buying land in America. And it's very concerning, because the rate and the amount of money that was spent in New Mexico alone was frightening. Really? And so you've probably seen some news where people have bought strategic pieces of land next to Air Force bases and things like that. And I just raised that flag because again, I don't care if you're white, yellow, purple, green. If you're an American, buy American. I love that. But when there are countries out there that are strategically trying to purchase up our land and printing money to do so, then it becomes concerning, because that squeezes us Americans here who are on our own soil, trying to, increase our generational wealth,
Yeah.
and maintain our foothold. Because again, that is concerning, and I know that strikes a chord with a lot of people. They may think that there's some harshness there, but that's the reality of it. And I've seen it firsthand, and that's in New Mexico. We're pretty insulated compared to a lot of the other states, and it is happening big time. So we have to be careful that we don't one day wake up and the vast majority of our land is owned by foreign entities, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And I would consider myself somewhat young, but even in my young age, I do know that the world is not rainbows and sprinkles.
Mhm.
So there's a harsh truth to a lot of things that are going on, whether you like the truth or not. That's just what it is. And it's not like I'm making the truth. It just, if foreign governments will say, we'll just cut to the chase. Foreign governments are buying our land is getting smaller, which means our country is getting smaller, which means our power is going to get smaller. And we don't want power to like go and be the big bully in the world, but you have to have enough of a stance in your own land to defend yourself. So like that would be side one. And then two, there was actually just a story that's been happening in Milwaukee that I don't think a lot of Milwaukee knows about, but there's a foreign country came in and bought an abandoned mall that's in Milwaukee. They bought it and did nothing with it. They didn't secure the premises, nothing. So people are going in, looting, breaking, starting fires. I don't know if there's any shootings or fatalities within it, but nothing was secure. Do you think the foreign government is taking their money to clean that up? Or do you think it's our servicemen, our firefighters, our police officers, our tax dollars paying for it? So what Milwaukee basically did is they fined them an exorbitant amount of money every day that they did not have it secured, and then fined them, and then they had to fit the bill for it. Because it's like, you can't have the US taxpayers and citizens paying for your property that you're not protecting. Like that just doesn't, that logically does not make sense. And yes, it stinks that we have to charge them for it. That's like not the rainbow and sprinkle part about it, but it's not rainbows and sprinkles. Like it's people's money. It's people's like food that they feed their children or give them education with that money. Like
it creates a detriment to that community. I mean, now you have this abandoned mall where crime is taking place. It's a gathering place for people that are unscrupulous. It's a health hazard. So there's all these things that happen when something like that happens, and we're seeing that across. Now, again, someone comes in from Argentina, they're a business owner, they buy a business, they open a restaurant or something. I love that. That is absolutely fantastic. But it's the governments, foreign governments, that are planting people to purchase properties at an incredible rate, which to me, it's almost like the python that is slowly circling you and getting tighter and tighter. And it is a very big concern for me. And I think you're going to start to see more of that. So I want that to be on your radar and your listeners' radar. Pay attention to that, because if we wake up one day and the majority of our country is owned by foreign nationals, then that is a big, big problem. And again, I have no ill will for anyone that's an American to buy American soil, but we can't go to their country and buy properties. The ones that I'm speaking of, we're not allowed to own property in their countries. They know better, right? They know what can happen. So we're just allowing it to happen. So I would think that that's something that needs to be on the radar.
Yeah, and especially like just on the agent side, I think the last CE year, the continuing education, they added basically a page in the contract if you're purchasing property for foreign purchasers. Yep. I'm guessing this year's CE is going to be more expansive on that.
We have what's called a FERPTA Act, and it's a start to this. Basically, what it says is if you are not a United States citizen, you own property here, when you sell that property, a certain amount of those proceeds have to be withheld. Because what they could do is sell, make a bunch of money and take it and never pay taxes, right? So the government is trying to shore up the tax component, but they're missing the actual component, and that is the ownership of that land is no longer in America. That ownership of that land is overseas or in some other place, which is scary to a large
Yeah.
degree. So that FERPTA does shore that up a bit, but when they're printing, these governments are printing their own money, and they're using leveraging with their monetary systems and things like that. Who cares? They're going to print some more money. They don't care about FERPTA. They're gonna let someone keep the 20%, move on, but most likely they're not going to liquidate that asset. It's been my experience that they haven't liquidated those assets.
Yeah. And I'm sure they look at it as the land in America is more valuable than the debt we're creating in our own country to do so.
I could see that. Yeah, absolutely. I could see that. And they also see it as the ability to continue to, gain ownership in a corporation without people not knowing, you know what I mean? Kind of flying into the area, and you're buying up a corporation. America is often considered a corporation. If you're slowly buying up and no one notices, then at some point you become the majority owner. Yeah. And then there's trouble. So
that's a scary thought.
It is a scary thought. That's what keeps me up at night. And I want to share that with you. Again, no ill will from people that are moving here from other countries and whatnot, and doing it with the right intention. I absolutely love that. That's what America is made on. We are a melting pot. We have all different cultures and people that come here to do better. I'm talking about intentional movement from governments that are not friendly to the United States.
Yeah. And I'm sure as things progress, like the door has been creaked open. So hopefully that just keeps getting pushed open. Like that's the door we want to push open more. Yeah. So hopefully all the work you're doing and people like you in those positions in other states are pushing for that as well. So keep the fight going.
Thank you for that. You guys, this has been awesome. I appreciate you having me on. I'll definitely come back and we'll actually talk about business.
I want to get into stuff you've been doing, because you've been talking about how you're helping other people, which is great. But I want to know what Ben is doing in his business. So next show, I cannot ask you any more on government. It's got to be your business.
I'll keep you on track, Marcus.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Natasha.
Yeah. Thank you guys so much. It's been an honor to be on your program.
Yeah, no problem. I appreciate the time. Thank you so much. We'll catch up with you soon. Hopefully the snow doesn't stick around too long for you.
Just enough to sled.
Exactly. Exactly. All right. Have a good weekend. We'll talk soon.
You guys take care.
Thanks, guys. Bye.